Right, welcome back. And to highlight the foreign or the ministerial level mechanism meeting that took place in Chad, and of course of great concern towards the developments in Sudan. We have with us over the phone His Excellency Ambassador Gamal Harridy, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Madam.
Your Excellency. Let me here take, this is the first ministerial meeting or mechanism meeting to take place in Chad right after the neighboring meeting or summit that was held here in Egypt. How do you view this meeting? How do you view what stemmed out of it, and how do you read the situation?
Well, this, as you rightly said, this is a follow-up meeting on the ministerial level after the neighboring countries summit that was hosted by Egypt last month. And according to declaration or the conclusion of the summit, this meeting in Chad took place to agree on what was called or is called a mechanism for following up the situation in Sudan. Of course, we are waiting so far no contacts between the members of this mechanism and the warring parties have been reported. But we hope that such a step would facilitate an agreement among the warring parties on a ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire. The situation, having said that, we have to be realistic. The situation today is very complicated, and it seems that neither party in the conflict raging in Khartoum would like to compromise in order to bring to an end this fighting.
Your Excellency, here we've heard the statements, or we followed up with the statements of the ministers who participated there, and definitely Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry spoke on behalf of Egypt, saying that the Sudanese people expect the neighboring countries to come out with a unified voice. What do the Sudanese people expect from neighboring countries? What could be an action plan?
Well, there are several initiatives all of them aim at a ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire, and then the start of a political process whereby the Sudanese people would have a civilian government. So one of the conditions of the success of international and regional efforts in Sudan is that the international community comes up with a unified stand or one initiative that really would compel the warring parties to respect a ceasefire. Otherwise, we, in the face, taking into account the various initiatives on the ground in Khartoum, and neither one of them has been able so far to end the military operations in the Sudanese capital.
Your Excellency, we're speaking here about an African solution. We're not seeing the international community really responding to the Sudanese crisis as much as it is doing with the crisis in Niger or the problems in Niger. How do you view that?
Well, of course, the situation in Niger is different from what's going on in Sudan. In Niger, this is, of course, a domestic problem on top of competition among European and international powers, not only in Niger, but in the Sahel. In Sudan, it seems to me that the situation is not similar. In Sudan, two parties, the army on the one hand, and another armed militia, are fighting it out on the streets of Khartoum in order to gain power in Sudan. So it's, but of course, there are regional interests at play here. So the two, but having said that, of course, the Sudan, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, all this belt across Africa is really beset by insecurity, instability, and competition among the great powers and European powers.
Indeed. Back to our topic and Sudan, and how do you assess the situation in Sudan? How do you view, or in brief, what is going on in Sudan?
Well, the two leaders, the Mr. Lieutenant General Burhan and Lieutenant General Hamidi, up to now, they don't want to accept a ceasefire. And the situation is very complicated, and each one of them looks at the situation in Sudan as a zero-sum game. That is to say that in order to win, I have to exclude the other party, and vice versa. If this is the state of mind of the two leaders, I personally doubt that we will see an end to the fighting in Sudan anytime soon.
Right. Your Excellency, Ambassador Hussein Harridy, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much for being with us. Definitely, the situation here is very much aggravated by the stubborn of both sides, and of course, definitely one important issue is how they are not prioritizing the Sudanese interests in the first place. Needs lots of work. Before we move on with our discussion, let's first have a quick this quick report, and we'll come back.
Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry participated on Monday in the first ministerial meeting of Sudan's neighboring states summit in the Chadian capital, N'Djamena. The meeting aims at introducing solutions to settle the Sudanese crisis and maintain the African country's territorial integrity. Addressing the meeting, Shoukry said that the initiative launched by Sudan's neighbors in Cairo was the largest proof of their keenness to stand by the African country to overcome its plight and put an end to its devastating conflict. He added that Egypt in particular was keen to establish contact among all the Sudanese parties and bring them to negotiate a way out of the crisis. Egypt's top diplomat noted that the meeting was a real interpretation of Cairo's summit recommendations for hammering out a thorough vision and taking coordinated steps towards halting the bloodshed, maintaining Sudan's unity and stability, and curbing the repercussions of the crisis on its neighboring states. The foreign minister also stressed the significance of concerted efforts for convincing the parties in Sudan to immediately cease fire. He called on the neighbor states to take immediate procedures to deliver quick relief aid to the Sudanese people. Wrapping up their meetings, foreign ministers of Sudan neighboring countries issued a statement stressing the significance of integration and coordination between the African Union initiatives, IGAD organization, and Sudan's neighboring countries, welcoming the plan of UN humanitarian response. The statement called on countries and donor organizations to speed up supporting the plan. It stressed the necessity of establishing humanitarian warehouses in the neighboring countries to transfer aid and medical care for the victims. The statement called on parties of dispute to facilitate offering humanitarian aid. The ministers agreed on meeting in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly meetings in September to follow up implementing the decisions.